Welcome to the new Rainmaker podcast, a weekly show for visionary founders and team members alike to come together and share the heartfelt, the cringe, and the radically honest truths about what it's really like to build and work for some of the world's most exposed brands on the biggest internet stages. I'm your host, Veronica Romney, and after working for some of the biggest names in the online space myself, I've learned that it takes both leadership and dream team collaboration to truly scale a company to its greatest potential. You can build a business alone, but you cannot scale it on your own. And my goal on today's episode and every episode is to inspire our dreamers and empower our leaders. Make sure to follow and share my podcast with your friends and colleagues, and feel free to tag me on Instagram at vromney with your insights and ahas. Now let's make it rain on today's episode. Laura, welcome to the Rainmaker podcast. I'm super excited to have you. I know we're going to talk shop about all things hiring, retention, making sure we have the right person, because your zone of genius, which I think is super relevant right now, is finding perfect candidates for clients and helping people find new work homes that they feel appreciated in. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to hang out with you and your audience. It's one of the best places on the internet.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay, so why don't you do me a favor? Why don't you formally introduce yourself to the listeners of the Rainmaker podcast so we're all on the same page and everybody knows who you are and your genius?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Couvillon, co-founder, co-owner of Integrate Up. We have a hiring agency, recruiting agency that helps digital entrepreneurs add to their dream team. So that could be any position. That could be the integrator, the director of operations, a virtual assistant, sales, HR, etc. Anyone on your remote team. We've been in business for about 3 years. And when I'm not working hard with my business partners, I have a couple, I am spending time with my family. Live in Houston, Texas, have 3 kids, married to my husband for almost 15 years now, and love to travel. And I am living the soccer mom life.
Yes, and you are a phenomenal human being and have a heart of gold, and people don't know that necessarily, but I just want to point that out. You're a great person, and somebody I trust.
Likewise, but your audience knows that about you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so let's start with this, because what I find fascinating about what you do, and certainly what I've done, you and I are no strangers to other industries. However, you have taken on the particular refiner's fire and challenge of not just recruiting, which is an art form and also a challenge in and of itself. Wow. But you do it for, I would say, one of the hardest industries on the planet, which is the digital west, so like wild, wild west, right? It's the digital entrepreneur, it's the online industry, it's visionaries who sometimes have never worked in a corporate environment or something with that kind of hierarchy, and everything is moving at all the given time. So you might have a conversation with somebody today and they're clear that they need a director of ops, and then you talk to them 2 weeks from now, they've gone to a mastermind like, nope, I'm clear, I need a personal assistant or an executive assistant, right? So why did you choose this industry, and what are some of your most common observations about this particular space that you and I decided to play in?
Well, first, I want to take one step back and say we're so in sync, because I have a couple notes that I hope we hit on. And one I wrote down is the Wild Wild West, which I think anyone listening can agree. The digital marketing industry is the Wild Wild West, which is so beautiful because it's so opportunistic, but it's also sometimes uncharted territory. So why did I choose this? I didn't choose it. It chose me. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, truly going back many years ago, I have a corporate background. I spent 10 years planning large conferences and trade shows for oil and gas, petrochemical, chemical, and very corporate environment, and a lot of travel. So when I had kids, I did not want to travel anymore. Stayed at home for a bit, but when I re-entered the workforce, I fell into this digital marketing opportunity by following someone on Facebook and then going down this rabbit hole of like, wow, this woman makes a career out of this. So just really understanding the opportunity as in my life where I was in the season to be able to work from home. Before that was such a buzzword, right? Work from home or buzzwords. And I was able to carve out a path. I started for a hot minute, I was terrible at it, as social media manager, terrible. And then I went into the OBM role. I still actively work as a fractional integrator for Stephanie Dove Blake with Social Sparrow. And I've been doing that for 4 years. So I fractionally partner with her. And then I have my Integrate Up business. So it just was kind of a series of events. And then to really give the background, as a fractional worker in this space, your book of business, and all the contractors listening can relate to this, your book of business fills rather quickly. You can only handle so many clients. And for those contractors telling me you have 12 clients, I don't believe you. Anyhow, I got my book of business got full, and then I would still meet with entrepreneurs that needed help in this OBM, director of operations integrator capacity. So I started referring people. And fairly soon, those referrals did not work out. The
Mm,
contractor spoke too highly of themselves, or they were really good at getting business, but not actually working. Or likewise, the entrepreneur didn't know what they really wanted. And so they would hire, and then
yep.
it would be a terrible. And so I just thought, this is not good. I cannot put my name behind these referrals. And that's really where Integrate Up was born. Well, let us come in and help you actually find someone that makes sense for your business, that is the right role for your business. Let's mitigate as much risk. Let's make sure these people are not overselling you. Entrepreneur, let's make sure
Mm,
these contractors are not overselling you on discovery calls, which that happens. And I'm just going to call it like it is. That happens in our industry. And so we now have this proprietary system, and we do our best to represent the entrepreneur and their company, their cultures, their values, but also understand what skill set they need. And we have many people that are attracted to all these positions, but we have to filter through. Do you make sense on a cultural values level? But do you also make sense? Can you show up and do this work? Do you show up and do
mhm.
this work? So that's maybe a long answer to a short question, but that's it.
No, no, it's the perfect answer. And number one, the online industry is so mom friendly. That doesn't surprise me this path chose you. It actually just makes me really happy to hear that. And then number two, I would say what we do is really interesting, and the field in which we do it is very interesting. And as an Enneagram 8, I have no problem saying hard things and throwing out a red card, so to speak, on both sides of the industry. Meaning, I'm have no problem lovingly but firmly, calling out a client, a visionary, if, hey, you are not clear on what you're needing or wanting, or your expectations are way off base here. Like you're asking somebody on paper to work 80 hours a week, but then soliciting it as a flexible work from home 20-hour job. What the? I see that. But then I also too see on the other side, red card on the other side, where candidates overinflate their abilities, their skills. Not to say that education is not important and certifications go a long way, but be honest about your work experience and don't overinflate anything, because that we'll know right away and get really frustrated. And then what happens on the visionary side is that it further reinforces this idea that I can't trust anyone. And that's where we don't want to get into, because then now we're having some PTSD and we're having some work trauma and relationships. So, like, red cards on both sides. I see it all the time. I know that you see it all the time. That's literally the nature of what you do. Now, I will back you up on this. I have brought in Laura and Tori Ann from Integrate Up multiple times when working with my fractional chief of staff clients. When I come in and I'm working with a private client and we're doing team expansion, it's Laura and her group that I bring in, because I've seen their proprietary process. I see how they screen. I see how, when, and what stages they involve us on our side as the team. And I'm obsessed. I love it. I recommend you to everybody that I know when needing a recruiter. So that I will validate 100%. You guys go thorough, like thorough. Okay, so can we talk about the industry as it stands today? Because we're on the backside of a global pandemic. Almost everybody's working from home, or at least it feels like that in the online industry. That's no longer a novelty or a novel idea. We have teams that are expanding and contracting. When you first engage with a visionary client, with a CEO, and they're coming to you, do they already have an idea of, like, I need this? Or do they come to you with like an open page? Like, how does it work on that initial conversation?
It's all over the map, just as you would expect from the wild, wild west, right?
Yeah.
We have, I meet with entrepreneurs who, you mentioned it in the beginning, they go to a
Yep.
mastermind and all their friends there have an
Yep.
integrator. And then they meet with me, and that's not actually what you need, will serve you best. Or they hear of the social seller. I need a social seller. Well, actually, you just need someone, a virtual assistant that's going to answer your DMs. It's not
Mm.
so nuances. So, no, it's very rare the person is clear on what they need.
Okay.
And we work with them to coach them the best. But that is where I feel like, going back to this wild, wild west analogy, how many times can I say that on your show? Is building, any entrepreneur listening, the business you have built is so beautiful, so unique. I want you to feel and love that. However, business is not unique and it's not original. And there are ways we can glean from other industries, corporate, and do what you're doing
Yeah.
well. So don't reinvent every wheel. If you're going to build a funnel, you're going to find someone that already builds funnels. I mean, let's be smart. That's why you attend masterminds
Mhm.
and you join these groups, so you don't have to start from scratch. So when it comes to building your team, this role you've created that you think is perfect, that actually has 7 different skill sets that does not make sense, that you can't find that anywhere else. So
Mhm.
let's not hire for that role, because that's, your business isn't that unique that you think you need that. What you're actually feeling is you are dealing with these 7 different skill sets yourself, and it's a pain point and you want them off your plate. So let's talk about what that looks like. It's not hiring someone to do all of that. And I know you're a big proponent of not hiring these Frankenstein roles,
Mhm.
but no, it's actually a frustration of, personally, of people don't have clarity of who they need to hire. And I'm going to go a step further. You mentioned this. I feel like we're at this place in the industry. I'm an Enneagram 7, so I can say things pretty directly, but I always like back it up with some joke to make it super light.
Mhm.
So in case I offend someone, I can say, "Oh, I'm just kidding." But we're at this place. My observation is the entrepreneur, the business owner,
Mhm.
there's not 100% clarity.
Mhm.
Maybe you've hired and you've been quote unquote burned. Everybody likes to tell me how they've been burned in the past. And you hired a role, the person didn't show up correctly, or they didn't meet your expectations, but you didn't even know what your expectations were, or they couldn't sustain the job because, like you mentioned, it was 80 hours a week, or you didn't have an onboarding process. Then at the same point, we have this whole group of people that
Mhm.
have come into this digital space to be the implementers, the workers, the contractors, sometimes the employees, and they've also been burned
Mm.
because they sign up to work in a business that took advantage, that micromanaged, that boxed them at 3 a.m. and expected a response, that put too much on their plate. So we have these two people groups coming in with baggage and being burned. And it's not a good formula sometimes to add to your team. So what I would personally like to see is, entrepreneur, I know you want to take a lot off your plate in order to where you can ultimately get into that CEO role, the coveted
Mhm.
visionary, where you're just constantly dreaming and you're only attending masterminds. But spoiler alert, you're already that CEO, whether you have people doing everything underneath you or you're still doing a lot of tactical things. You're already the visionary. So you need to be the leader of your team, and you need to treat them like they're part of your team and they're not a unicorn. They're not just someone that's going to come in and flip a switch and make your business grow by 30%. That's your job. Your job is to pour into these people and to help them grow by, purchase a course for them, give professional development, reteach what you're learning in your mastermind to them, pour into them, because I hear it from I'm getting chills. I feel like I'm really just like giving it today, but I hear from the
Get it out, Laura. Get it out.
I hear the contractors, some of them want to come and they want to work with entrepreneurs for multiple years. They don't want this churn and burn of always trying to find a new client, but they're going to leave if they feel like a commodity and not a team member. So the entrepreneur has to take
Mm.
responsibility. They have to take responsibility to grow these people and to pour vision casting into them. So huge disconnect that we all are dealing with, and I've had it.
Okay, that was like a truth bomb of truth bombs, being treated like a commodity and not a team member. I just had to give that line a moment. It's just a little stage moment. Okay, so I was listening this morning. I'm just exactly what you're saying. I'm in such flow with you right now. So I was listening to a book this morning on Blinkist. If anybody love or if you like books, but you like, anyways, I like Blinkist. It's just like a compression, a Cliff Notes version of books. Anyways, I was listening to a book this morning called No Bullshit Leadership by Christ Hurst, I think is how I say it. And he's like, I think there's so many misconceptions of what being a leader is, blah, blah, blah. I can be an Enneagram 8 and be a phenomenal leader. You can be an Enneagram 7, be a phenomenal leader. Like there's so many colors of great leadership. But really, in the most simplistic way of saying, a leader just gets people from A to Z. Like, your job is to guide human beings from A to Z. We do it as parents, hopefully, right? We do it as employers. We do it as people that serve in our communities, in our church communities, in our families, things like that, right? So, taking that concept, a leader goes from A to Z. What's interesting to me is I feel like in this industry in particular, I think there's a lot of attention and there's a lot of due diligence by CEOs when it comes to mapping out the prospect journey from A to Z or the customer journey from A to Z, but not the team member's journey from A to Z. That is the one area that I like. And you mentioned onboarding, but it's like, it's so much more than even just like
Yes.
quote unquote corporate onboarding or HR onboarding. It's like, we're so meticulous and thoughtful about, meeting the prospect at the right point in their story, introducing ourselves as a guide to their journey that can solve a particular problem at a particular time. And then they become a customer. And when they become a customer, then I can upsell them, downsell them, cross sell them, because as I solve one problem, another problem manifests in a great way. And then da da da, right? So we're so conscious of those things. And we go to masterminds and discuss those things. We talk to our peers about those things. And then we don't do that for anybody on our team. And they are just as deserving of a transformation that just like your prospect and customer is. Am I not wrong?
This is so good. And for anyone listening, I hope you really take this to heart, because the ROI on doing that is massive. If you
Mm-hmm.
really think through your team members' journey, so to speak, and how their growth path in your company, they will stay with you for years, and they will stay with you and support you. And that longevity in this space is not common, but it's so valuable
Mm-hmm.
because it allows legacy. Oh, when we were doing it this way, I remember they'll want to lean in and build processes for you've never thought of. They'll want to grow in an area. Maybe it's tracking your KPIs. I mean, they'll start thinking. You'll build basically entrepreneurs, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
valuable. And so I think that's really good advice. If you obsess over your team members the same way you obsess over your customers, you'll have a unstoppable business.
Yeah, there's this misconception. And before I even say the Surgeon General warning, I'm not anti SOPs. I don't really particularly enjoy making them like anybody else, like, right? There's people that do. And then you sort of choose to, surround yourself with those kind of people. But it's not that I'm anti documentation and team handbook and SOPs, but I think there's this misconception that SOPs make teams go faster. I would counter. I feel like team retention helps you execute
Absolutely.
faster, right? When you can retain that human capital that your people have and that are walking your company, your virtual company walls with, if you can retain that and it doesn't walk out the door in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, that type of retention of experience and human capital in your team members is what helps you execute faster, is why you can do a 4-week prep to a launch versus an 8 or 12-week prep for a launch, because your team has just done it so many times and like they just got it. So yes, retention is everything. Okay, so we've talked at nauseum about the pitfalls of the industry.
I'm going to step you.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say really quick about SOPs, because that's a beautiful point. And this is just a practical takeaway. So SOPs are good for documentation. Following them can be really challenging. I mean, they can just be too detailed. But what you can do when you have long-term contractors or employees is you can empower them to take their role. And is this SOP not suiting you for responding to customer inquiries? Great. Let's scratch it. Whatever works best for you, employee, let's empower you to create your own system, to create your own way of
Mhm.
doing it. Oh, you don't need to save these graphics over on our Dropbox. You would rather just save them here. Great, great. Do that. Let's empower you to do your job to the best of its ability. That then, as the employee or the contractor, you've indicated you trust me. You've empowered me to actually think outside the box and to not just be a
Mhm.
check off an SOP step. And then I feel like I'm growing. And those are three
Mhm.
things everybody wants in life, many more, right? But just, and you can only do that when you have longevity on your team. If you have churn and burn people in and out, of course you're going to need them to follow your SOP, or else they're going to come in and really mess something up. But yeah, and having those short launches, the 4 weeks versus the 8 weeks, is because afterwards they're able to, how can we do this better? It's not about writing the
Yep.
SOP better. It's about how can we do this better. So next time we're not going to send out that third email that just elongated it. Let's blah, blah, blah. So yeah.
Right. 100%. We'll be back with this interview right after the commercial break. Did you know that I have a free Rainmaker hiring kit? Skip the formal recruiting process and learn how to source Rainmaker applicants that are already connected to you. I'll show you how to turn a walking testimonial into a rockstar team member for free. Head to veronicarami.com or click the link in my show notes to get your hands on the free Rainmaker hiring kit. Now let's get back to the show. Let's give a success story, shall we? Let's paint a rainbow to the storm and a pot of gold at the end of it. You work with a lot of CEOs who do this right, who have a good track record of great retention and that employees love working for them and want to stay with them. So paint the picture of how our CEOs can do it right. And then let's flip the script and we'll talk about the aspiring team member perspective. But for now, let's talk about the successful CEOs. What do they do, in your opinion, and from what you see? How do they get it right?
So the successful CEOs are very clear on, I'll call it their org chart, their current org
Mm,
chart and their future org chart of what they're building towards. And so it's a very methodical process. So a good way to think of that is right now it might be you and 5 people under you. So that means you have a flat org chart with no management. And we did a hire for someone. We recruited, they had a marketing team of about 5 people reporting directly to this CEO. That's taxing, but she knew that was how she had to build it before she could find a marketing manager to layer in between the team and her. So we recruited the marketing manager, and this person was not 100% perfect, but the marketing manager, she was about 95% perfect for the role. She came in and the CEO met with her every day for 90 days, every day,
wow.
for about 30 minutes every day. At the 90-day mark, she doesn't have to meet with that person anymore. Now she has a manager that is managing the team the same way she was doing it. She wants to see. So it's knowing she was pouring into that person. She knew if she got someone she could work with, and I'm going to say it again, this person was about 95% perfect, she could grow them the additional 5%. And I know for a fact this CEO has very little turnover. I mean, everyone has turnover, but very little. People stay with her long term. But she does team retreats regularly and she methodically
Mhm.
knows which role she's going to fill. It's not based off of a pain point of, I'm so stressed out of answering all these customer inquiries. And that is a way to also uncover what you need to hire is the biggest pain point. If you're spending 10 hours a week in your inbox answering questions about your course, if you're a coach course creator, let's start there. Let's get someone to do that, right? And that's not going to require you to meet with them 30 minutes every day. It's not a management position, but just understanding what will not get you to tomorrow, but what will get you to 5 years from now and how to grow that.
Oh my gosh, I want to do like snaps. Yeah, and it's interesting because we bring on people to help us save time, but that doesn't happen immediately.
Oh,
In fact, the opposite
yes.
happens, right? The bigger the role you bring them on, the more you're going to pour out in time and resources and brain power to get that person to a place where then you are then saved the time, like you said, 30, 90, whatever days out from that position or that start date. So I think it's a really good point to remember that when you as a CEO with a level of self-awareness realize, crap, I need help, I'm drowning, I'm going to bring people to my party to alleviate me, I'm burned out, and that will probably mean I won't have as much patience for the hiring and training up process, and I need to remember that every single day. And if that means writing a note on your mirror in the morning that like the commitment that you make for the next 90 days will help you in the long run, just like Laura said. But that's really important, especially when our CEO is already burned out to begin with, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's hard. It's going to hurt before it feels better, but it will feel tremendously better.
Okay, so let's flip the script because what I love about the Rainmaker podcast is I really try to tailor it to both types of listeners, right? For our CEOs who are expanding their empire, but also for the team members with really great hearts that really do want to find a work home that they can feel loved and appreciated and have contribution and expand their own human capital. So, what is it from your perspective as somebody who is seeking a new place of employment? What are the tips that you could grant to them that would be enormously helpful to navigate these wild, wild streets, internet streets?
Um, so there's two types really, right? You have the contractor, you have someone who's looking for an employee role at
Mhm.
W-2, and that's vastly different. So I'll speak to the contractors first. There's this trend in our industry to take a course and all of a sudden you're certified in XYZ. So that makes you go from $20 an hour to $1 million an hour. And that's just not realistic. But also, what that does and teaches you is that you, as the contractor, you have your own business and you're a business builder serving
Mhm.
other business builders. And often, the visionary entrepreneur, they don't want another business to come in and serve them. Sometimes, if it's project based, to build out a funnel or to just do graphics, but they want the alignment of a team member. So I would tell the contractor, even if you do have your own business, please keep in mind you're still a service provider. So first and foremost, you provide a service, whether that's to be a team member or to deliver something such as graphics or social media. So please keep in mind you're a service provider, because I will get these applicants and contractors that, man, the moment we start a conversation, they love to tell me all their boundaries. I only work this time, this
Ooh.
time. It's like, okay, good, because human beings should have boundaries, but slow your roll. We don't need to talk about that yet. Let's just talk about how you're going to provide a good service for this person or how you can be a good team member. So I would just challenge you to talk about how can you fit in well? What skill set do you have that would work well for this business owner? Don't come in with, this is how I'm communicated with. Oh, I don't do Voxer. I only do Slack. And when you start building this box in which you constrain yourself in, which again, this industry teaches, it's like you're limiting yourself. I mean, if you were in corporate, I would never go in for an interview and be like, if you're going to email me on the weekend, I will check it Monday at 8 to see if I got this job. No,
Yeah, that doesn't go over very well.
no.
Yeah.
And no one's asking you to work till midnight. That's not the point either, because you do need boundaries. I mean, I have them
Mhm.
in place, but it's just not a starting point. So I don't know
Mhm.
if that's a tip, but please see yourself as someone to align with the company rather than standing on your own 2 feet as your company only. You're going to align with people, and that's what they're looking for.
How can we explore this a little bit more? Because my brain just like exploded, I think. Because you're right. So two trends, right? This industry is full of personal development. So get on social media right now, and there's going to be tons and tons of content around having boundaries and not giving an F and standing up for yourself and things like that. And then there's also a lot of language around like your terms, your life, do right. But then you are or you are, to your point, you're a service provider for people that prescribe and subscribe to these anthems, right? So how do you or when do you bring up boundaries? Because a lot of the things that you shared to me screams previous workplace trauma. Like
Yeah.
it's when I know exactly what you're talking about because I had a visionary that would fox me at 2 or 3 in the morning. I wasn't up at 2 or 3 in the morning, but I wake up and like instantly I was like, oh no. Like, or I'd wake up in the morning and there was like what I call the Voxer vomit, where it's like 7 Voxers in a row and they're all like 2 to 5 minutes, if not longer each. And you're like, and you're instantly waking up going, what am I walking into? Right. And it's stressful. So, but then you had to honor our visionary CEO personalities and honor the genius that they are. So, how or when, especially in the interview process, does that come up ideally where it doesn't turn somebody off? I'm curious from your perspective.
Well, those entrepreneurs that box at 2 or 3 in the morning, they're never going to go away. Some people have built their business on that. And I mean, good for them. Honestly, it suited them well. They have made the revenue, and can they change? Sure. But we have worked with those
Mhm,
entrepreneurs, and we're very transparent in the process. And that, hey, you
mhm,
can
mhm.
expect messages, but we're also telling the entrepreneur, most likely you're going to get candidates that will answer that in the morning. And they all say that's fine. But okay, so let's see what we can get done here. If we can find someone to fill the role, you just have to know what you're walking into as the employee
Mhm.
or the contractor, and you have to decide if that's right for you. And you can't pass judgment if if the entrepreneur is going to do that, they're going to do that. And I actually, my first client in this space years ago would message 11, 1, and one time I responded. I was up. I gave permission.
Uh-oh.
So we were back and forth. And I thought it was awesome. And then I was like, whoa, this is becoming a trend. So lesson
Yep.
learned. If you want to keep boundaries, you have to establish those. And I'll go to my integrator hat role, but I work closely with Stephanie. Over our years of working together, boundaries have changed and evolved. A good example is I go dark from 3 to 4:30 because I'm picking up kids from school. That's an enormous value of mine. I will be there and I play at the park and well, they play. I talk to moms and I I do not check my phone, but I check it when I get back.
Mhm.
And then in terms of weekends and nights, I respond if I can. And if I can't, she knows I can't. It's not a boundary thing because we've now gotten in a good flow. I don't feel invaded whatsoever. So I think you go into this knowing people are dynamic, boundaries can change. It's what can you accept on your stress level. So the Vox or vomit, is that going to stress you out in the morning? Are you not able to
Sure.
just put it out of your mind until 9 a.m.? Or are you going to start being like, I can't believe they did that? Well, I can. I mean,
Mhm.
they're putting it there thinking, I just need to get this off my chest and tell someone. So the boundaries don't need to necessarily be defined from day one, but they do need to be kind of constructed. And then if they
Mhm.
change, they evolve. And I mean, even corporate workplaces do that, right? You just have to know what
Yeah.
you're going into eyes wide open. And some people might love the boxer vomit in the morning because they feed off of this energy, whatever it may be. So just I would say not placing any judgment on how it goes, if that makes sense. If the entrepreneur
Yeah.
can't keep boundaries, that's okay, but you just have to be able to keep yours and just don't make it so rigid to where there can't be any flexibility.
Mhm. Uh, well, yes, I think knowing yourself and being an example to others around you is really important. So if you say I'm all for boundaries and I have strict boundaries, but then you don't uphold your boundaries, then that's not really going to do anybody any good, including yourself and your family, right? I didn't even remember this story until we just started talking about it, so I'm going to share a story. But I remember when I was interviewing with Natalie and Danielle at Boss Babe to be their chief of staff, and I had concerns because at the time neither one of them had kids. And I was like, "Uh-oh. I have two." And not like they're not older and independent. I have two man cubs. They're little and half naked half the time, right? Like they're little. And I'm in the throes of two little boys, right? And I want to, again, for me not to have any kind of regrets. I want to be a present mom. So even if I have people in my home to help me with like my chores, so to speak, right? And to help me manage my life, the one thing that I don't outsource is my kids. And that's just me. I'm not saying that I have any judgment against anyone else. I just, for me, that's like the one thing that I don't want to outsource. So I pick up my kids, I drop them off at school. I went through a really hard time in middle school, just being really vulnerable. I got sexually harassed in middle school, and my mom picked me up that day. And had she not picked me up that day, I don't know how my life would have turned out, because when I told her in the car, because I was crying, she went all the way Cuban, pulled that car around, took me to the principal's office, and helped me stand up for myself. So like these are the memories I have as a child. So when my kids have those really horrible days, I just want to be the one to receive them, or me or my husband, right? So, anyways, I remember when I was interviewing with Boss Babe, and I hadn't said it yet, but one of the concerns in my head was like, crap. I know what this type of arena requires. This is the big leagues. You have the exposure level of a brand this size is enormous, and all hands on deck. And I was up, right, chief of staff, like I'm in it. And so if there's an emergency at 3 a.m, it's going to be me. And I knew that, right? But I also was nervous that they wouldn't have maybe empathy or understanding to the fact that I had kids and they did not. So I remember in the interview process, I don't think I said that my concern was like, you two don't have kids, because that was going to come off way bad. But I remember asking them, is there somebody on the team? I would love to talk to different team members if you guys felt comfortable. And I would love to talk to fellow moms on the team if there's anybody that you would recommend that I speak to. And they let me do it. They introduced me through email with another female on the team at the time who was a mom. And we scheduled a call and had like a 45-minute call. And I got to then ask her all the boundary questions that I wanted to ask, but I asked it from her perspective, not the Visionaries perspective, because at the time, I didn't know if they were just going to like gloss over or not be as honest because they wanted to have me join the team. So I got to ask the team member very direct questions, and she was very direct back. So that's how I did it. I didn't even remember that story until we started talking about it, but maybe that would be a tip for anybody that had some potential boundary issues. When you have the opportunity to either do, in the layers of interviewing process, if you have an interview with a team member, that would be a place to do it. Or you can even ask for the opportunity to meet with a team member if that's something that you're concerned about.
That's genius. That is so good. So good. And so you went in eyes wide open, knowing your boundaries, but also knowing where there
Yes.
might be friction there and still taking the role because
Uh-huh.
so yeah, so I think that's so beautiful. What a great story.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. Wow, I didn't remember that story. So that was fun. Okay, so all right. So other tips that we can give people, other things that we can do to help really great people find the right place where they can just thrive. What are some other best practices that you see often?
Um, don't get this is a very female centric thing. Just
Mhm.
apply, reach out. Don't sell yourself short if you're not necessarily qualified for the role. I'm using air quotes. You can't see my hands. Based off of based off of an application or a job description, because often that is the wish list, but the actual requirements
Mm.
are only 70% of that or 30% of that. And so don't sell yourself short. Definitely put your name in the hat and articulate why you want the role. I don't know if this is true for your listeners, but I'm starting to hear it more. Contractors are willing because the profile of the employee and contractor is low risk. The profile of the entrepreneur and business owner is high risk. And so, what does a low risk person want? They want security, they want stability, they want to know that they're going to have a place for a long time to do good work. So, as the person applying for a role or doing a discovery call, if you can articulate that, that's music to an entrepreneur's ears. I want the security of being with you long term. I want to know what it takes to stick around. So letting them know that and speak into that can be really valuable. And also, I've heard you say this always. These are just check off mark things. Let me just give you a checklist of what you really should do. Every step of the process, treat it like you are showing up for your first impression interview. Don't
Ooh.
show up in athleisure wear just because our industry is athleisure wear friendly. Show up dressed to the nines. Don't show up in your car unless you can explain why you are in your car. Don't have background noise with children or cartoons. While that could be acceptable in the future with the team, it's not acceptable as a first impression. So you want clear background, you want a clear look, and you want clear communication. So those are just some trivial things that people are still missing. You will be counted out for those reasons. I'm just going to tell you straight up. But it's not often we see that, but sometimes we do. And so just please take that to heart. That's so silly, but
No, I think it's good to be reminded of that because, like you said, we're all at home. So, like business up top, like yoga pants at the bottom. I think that's actually really a good tip to just remember. Just because you're interviewing from home doesn't mean that you treat it like it's not, the same level of importance if you were to walk into an office and sit with somebody and they saw not just the front of your hair, but the back of your hair too. I feel like it's when you said first impression, like a bachelor, first impression rose, like you just want to go for the win. Okay, so this has been one of the more practical podcasts that we've done, but I think it's actually enormously helpful because I really do feel like a lot of people are in expansion mode when it comes to their teams. We are on the backside of a significant pandemic and then the economy, and there's a lot of burnout, a lot of overwhelm, a lot of CEOs who are like, I can't do this unless I get help. And so this has been a great podcast to just reiterate, acknowledge that you're burned out. These are things we want to avoid. These are things we want to do right. And I think it's also been really good practical advice for people that are wanting to alleviate those things for other people, because there are human beings in this world who are phenomenal team members. I'm going to say this. Sometimes I get frustrated at the industry, and I know it's a lot of us are online educators and course creators and influencers and personalities. And so we're always going to be preaching the pros and the lifestyle of entrepreneurship because that's what we live and breathe. But just because you're a team member for somebody else doesn't mean that you're second class or you're less than just because that you're not the visionary CEO. That actually like bothers me, that sometimes I think there's this I don't know, this current where if I'm not an entrepreneur, then I don't get to have the respect that entrepreneurs get to have. And I don't get to be in the right rooms, or I don't get to be in the kind of rooms that entrepreneurs get to be in. And most of the books aren't written for me, they're written for the entrepreneur. And I obviously with the Rainmaker residency, I don't prescribe to that. I made a program that like literally treats both the visionary and the marketing Rainmaker as equals because they are. But I just want to point that out, that like if you're a team member, don't ever for 1 second think that you're less than. You are everything. We as CEOs can't do anything without you, and don't ever forget that. Just want to point that out.
Oh my gosh, I love that because life is about choices. So as the entrepreneur, you're making choices to go on vacation, and yes, you're able to take that time off if you have a stellar team, but you're also, while you're there, the responsibility never leaves your shoulders. You're always responsible for paying your team, for making sure the traffic's coming in, selling the product, whatever it may be. You have the massive risk on your shoulders. You're making those choices, and then as the team member, you're making choices to have more methodical growth in your life, right? So you're joining a team and growing professionally, personally, while being able to turn things off on the weekends and actually read the fiction book or whatever you want to do and not think twice, because and both lives are beautiful and, like you said, equally important, and both need each other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I agree. The team member is so incredibly valuable for the entrepreneur, and
Mhm.
most know that, right? And so, but yeah, and for those that have come with burnout on this contractor employee side, I want to
Mhm.
let you know there are beautiful entrepreneurs that treat you well, don't run with urgency all the time, and I know those
Yeah.
people. I've met them, and they value their team so highly. So it is out
Yeah.
there.
Yes. Okay. Laura, you're so good at what you do. You and Torianne are so good at what you do. How do people that are in team expansion mode, or even the other way too, people can come to you because I know you have like a whole database of open job postings and things like that that people can learn about if they're looking for a job. So how do people connect with you and take advantage of what you guys are doing in the industry?
Well, thank you. That means a lot coming from you. The best way is just our website, integrateup.co. Come over there, and that is really built for the visionary, but there's also a link. We have a Facebook group for all of those job hunting individuals where we curate. It's really a place in the corner of Facebook for any opportunities,
Mhm.
not just the ones we are promoting. And really, at the core of what we do, we want to help people find their dream teams and help employees and contractors find their dream home. And it makes nothing happier than to see that happen, whether it be us,
Yeah.
that whether I'm involved in doing it or it just happens and we get to see them do it, because so much flows from that, right? So it's a happy life to be able to watch that. So integrateup.co.
Amazing. So thank you, Laura, for your time. Thank you for sharing such awesome wisdom on today's podcast.
Thank you for having me. I just adore you and your audience.
Thanks for listening to the Rainmaker podcast. We believe you can't get real results or have real relationships that last without being real first. If you resonated with today's episode, leave us a review so we can keep serving up the truth and tips that help you become the empowered leader that I know that you are. And always head over to veronicarami.com to check out all the free resources I have for you and the show notes from this episode. Until next time, my friends.